Let's say that you ask Mickey, like, what is your opinion of Taylor Swift? Mickey doesn't know who Taylor Swift is in like Disney lore, right? But he's got to answer that question, and he'll answer it in his own way.
We're talking about the live ops sort of pain point there. And I talk to gaming as well as non-gaming, and a lot in non-gaming actually, because particularly when you have a subscription app, you always have fresh content, you always have fresh offers, things, and you can't get that information to the user base, or you have new users. They have to be onboarded entirely differently than existing users, winning back old users. I mean, all these different types of conversations. These are going to be characters that become, social native entities. What blows your mind when you're thinking about this? Because you're shaping it, Rebecca. It's a great time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Peggy Ann. This is an example that I think of quite often, which is for a lot of these social platforms, they offer an experience to consumer where what the user experiences is a social network, or we experience social media. So we're on there, we are posting content, we are consuming content, and that's how most people experience these platforms. In terms of what is the actual practical use of this platform, a lot of it is in that advertising. So they are on the other side working with enterprise clients in order to be a really effective marketing tool for them. So I am starting to see with character agents from Saga that the same phenomenon is happening, where users are really enjoying themselves with these character agents. But what's happening in the background is that we are working with these studios, and it is proving to be a really great marketing tool, a really great business tool for them. So I think that just in terms of how this scales, that is what it's going to look like. Now, most people, hopefully, will see this as just a really great entertainment content experience. You get to talk with a character that has come to life. And the reason we picked characters in particular, as opposed to, let's just make really intelligent chatbots, or let's make generic AI entities for people to talk to, this is where the human aspect becomes incredibly important. So all of these characters were created by human ingenuity. And the reason characters are compelling is that they are not perfect. So they have their own nuances. So they are positive and friendly and cute, but not always. And I think that kind of, insertion of humanity into an agent is incredibly important for it to be compelling. I actually, for the people out there who are really worried that humans will become too dependent on sycophants from AI or LLMs that only tell you what you want to hear, I'm actually less concerned about that, because I think what the data is showing is that people don't like it when they're just told exactly what they want to hear. I think most people can smell that as BS. They want a much more layered relationship. That's not to say that they welcome toxicity or that they welcome just straight negativity from an agent, but a little bit more nuance than simply, generic positivity is welcome. And that's why we decided to work with characters to begin with. Now, as this platform becomes more self-serve, and the characters that we put out are not from major games, they're not from highly recognizable movies or TV shows, I think that's where the training model that we have is actually really going to shine, because Mickey was a genius creation, and he has had over a century of content to play with. What happens when you have a character that is starting from scratch, has never been created before, or probably has had just a year's worth of development from a creative team? How are we able to make that a very compelling content entertainment experience just from the fact that we have this agent training model? That's what I'm quite excited about, is that we put these agents out there that can have multiple uses in the end. Performance marketing is a big category, but it can have multiple uses. And if we can sort of define or set the standard for what a good synthetic relationship looks like with these agents, then I think we will have achieved something very, very big. How can we put agents out there that people are not purely using for functional purposes? So it's not a personal assistant.
Mhm.
That can be distributed broadly across lots of users, lots of players, audience members, fans, and be sort of this force that people find very compelling, despite the fact that it's not a human being.
I want to stay with the vision because I love, founder's lens, vision. You've worked across so many different industries, and we're going to get there in a moment. Your vision to more or less democratize the access to this through
Yeah.
self-serve. I'm trying to think where that can go, because then what we will be able to do is we will have marketers who can build this,
Hmm.
train it,
Yeah.
and deploy it. And if they don't already have a great story in their game, this gives them sort of that character development to aspire to at
Yeah.
some level. What is that going to look like for you as a company? Because I can imagine that if I had the opportunity, I say, "Hey, Rebecca, thank you ever so much. What do you think I need to build? How do I build it?" So you become like technology slash
Hmm.
consulting slash probably
Yeah.
another category here that I'm not even thinking about, because it's not just building it, it's like making it happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's actually one of the most interesting parts of this entire process is
Mhm.
seeing these characters truly come to life.
Right.
And before you actually test the agent, before you actually interact with the agent, then I think you can only have a partial idea of what it means for anything to come to life and actually have a rich personality of its own. So Saga is a technology company. We have built a technology platform, but I do think that already there is a significant sort of production aspect to this.
Yeah.
So it just it's not possible for a studio to come up with 24/7 content for a particular character. And honestly, just from the point of view of human resources, they probably don't want to do that.
Hmm.
But the agent is always available, and the agent has to always be compelling. So it cannot be the case that that these common threads ultimately just die off. Now people get busy; they start to be interested in other things. They need to be reactivated. The agent needs to reach out again. All of that is very
Yeah.
natural. But what we don't want to happen is that we've put an agent out there that is ultimately kind of boring. So a lot of it has also been interpretation from our own creative team. Let's say that you ask Mickey, like, what is your opinion of Taylor Swift? Mickey doesn't know who Taylor Swift is in like Disney lore, right? But he's got to answer that question, and he'll answer it in his own way. And it'll be cute and it'll be funny because you've asked Mickey about Taylor Swift. And that's really what our team has been spending time on. So I'll lift the veil a bit on our agent production process. And I suspect that when this platform does become self-serve and developers can do this on their own, that it'll be very similar. So the agent is trained on all the known lore and background and content for that particular character. That's the first draft. Then we make sure that the integrations with all the social channels are solid. And then we try to break the agent. We try to break it. And that's not just as simple as, can we get it to talk about taboo subjects? Can we get it to curse? Can we get it to mishandle user information or more sensitive information that the user is giving? All of that is just that's table stakes for the QA process. Then we start to see what happens if we try to get this agent to be out of character. So to become something that this character is definitely not. And then what happens when we try to expand this character? So there's a very fine line between the two, as I'm sure you can tell right away.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it's like having a friend in your circle, and one day they all of a sudden switch up their fashion taste, or they all of a sudden like start eating foods that they hate. That just is very jarring. Everyone has natural evolution over time. And so we try to mimic sort of the same thing for our character agents. Is there is expansibility there, but ultimately we don't want the character to come out of their natural personality, or fall out of their natural personality, because then it will seem like, oh, Saga's just done a bad job on this. So it's in that expansibility where I think a lot of the sort of more production type of work happens here. I think that'll be true for all the studios that we work with as well, once they start to do this on their own. But that is, it's a nice creative angle to this that should have been obvious when we first started developing these agents. But again, until you actually have agents out live and in the wild, you don't know what the full set of possibilities are. And this is a nice one for our team. I think everyone here really enjoys talking about, like, would character X respond this way? Would they even engage on this topic? Are they going to be funny about this? Are they going to try to be sarcastic about it, or more sincere? These are all questions that we talk about, every hour of every day. We wanted to put something out there that people would actually, keep coming back to. That is the job of the agent.
So what does the skill set look like for marketers? And it has to be fresh. It has to be funny. It makes me think of a little bit of the high pressure on ad copy. We're not always fun. And some developers are, I'm sorry, I've hung out with them. They are so into their craft that they wouldn't be able to really think outside of it and be this holistic. So you're almost saying that you have to have, like, a marketer would have to have a new skill set, maybe a little bit like a late night comedian or something, because you're going to have a different skill set or a different marketing team to keep it fresh, to keep it fun, to keep it on character. What does that look like? What does the marketer now look like, who is taking the character that you create, that you give me? I'm on my self-serve platform. What am I going to need to make this real?
Yeah, so AI does a lot of the work for you. So you don't have to produce that content. Yeah, you do not have to produce that content. You do not all of a sudden have to be
write jokes or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So AI will do that for you, but I think then it becomes a matter of taste. And I know that I'm not the only one who's been talking about taste in AI, and really being able to discern what is good AI content as opposed to AI content that you will just never allow other people to see. So I think the same is true for our agents. Again, no one has to come up with this content. The training model will do it on its own. That takes a very flexible training model. And honestly, when I talked about building that really cool technology product, this is the part that I find, like, really sick from just a nerd perspective. So of course we use the LLMs like any other AI app out there. But the majority of the training does not take place with the LLMs. It actually takes place with subagents and small language models that we have developed. So the purpose of the LLM is really to divvy up tasks among all of these smaller training models. And the reason for that is, well, one, efficiency. And secondly, an LLM doesn't do as well with things that are open-ended. So if you give it a very pointed inquiry or a very pointed prompt, then it'll spit back something that's pretty good. But if you're saying, be Mickey, they don't know where to start. And so you have to break down the task. You have to break down the certain parts of this personality. You have to have agents that look purely after staying within brand guidelines. That way, as the guidelines shift, which they often do, and in a quite urgent way, the agent will be responsive to that. But I can definitely see a world in which a marketer, just based on taste, not on ability to generate content, but just taste, say, I want more of this from the agent, or I really hate the direction this went in, don't go there again, et cetera. So I think for marketers who are interested in doing this, yeah, they become much more like directors, like editors,
Oh, wow.
like producers. Yeah.
Well, that sounds exciting because, it
Yeah.
takes away from the drudge work.
And the thing about AI is the pace of growth is definitely development, engineering talent, but it's also data. AI feeds off of data. And the fact that everybody uses it now. And a lot of this data is training the LLMs that are most commonly used across the world is just it's adding to the speed of the development. That's why everything is happening so quickly because it's not AI, being launched in a vacuum. Very few users, everybody is on it. And so it just, even if you never reveal the data, even if ownership of the data stays entirely with that particular company, that particular studio, et cetera, all of that does go towards training the model. And the model just gets richer and smarter.
It's interesting when we talk about how this is evolving and what you've done because you have evolved as well. You spot a category
Mm-hmm.
early, one of the early movers, certainly one of the coolest, but you have AI, blockchain, enterprise software, policy that we'll get to in a moment. I mean, it's not the typical founder path here, Rebecca. That's what
Yeah.
fascinates me the most. I mean, how did this all come together and maybe even help shape the way you see opportunity?
What's interesting is my path is not linear for sure. And a lot of people tease me because I did go to Stanford undergrad. And I graduated in 2006, and that was the heyday when Google started to hire basically everybody on campus. And so tech had been proven out at that point as a very big business. And people tease, it's like you could have made it a lot easier on yourself, Becca. You could have just gone to, work for a big tech company. And then when you felt you had learned enough, stop out and start to do your own startups. I took a completely circular path. When I was going to school, and I think this is still somewhat the case, startups were not founded by women. Startups were founded by boys in the computer science department.
Yeah.
Very specific.
Yeah.
And so it was not within the realm of possibility for me. I didn't even want to do it. It wasn't, oh, I really wish I could do this, but I feel constrained. I just didn't want to. It was not in my possibility space at all. Um, I do have a bit of a mouth on me, and I have always been interested in politics and always been interested in civic engagement. And so I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go to law school, and
Okay.
that's what I did. But it became very clear after a few years of practice. You mentioned my political background. I worked on 2 presidential campaigns. Technology is what drives the human experience. That is the reality of being a contemporary human being.
True.
And so I did my first startup, which was also in AI. This was early though. This was 2014 timeframe. Back then, we did not have good natural language processing. I remember engineers just really like banging their heads against the wall to try to figure out just any reasonable outcome from natural language processing. But the company is called Globality. It does AI-based procurement of international services. I was part of the early team there, headed up all of their BD. Really stayed with them through the entire hyperscaling process. We got backed by SoftBank within a year and a half, which shot us to unicorn status. So it's one of the early AI unicorns, and that was a really great, first startup to just really understand how does this work? How does it work to birth something new? How does it work to build a company? How does scaling a company look like? That's when I started to become more and more involved with technology just as a whole and talking to different sectors, people working on different parts of the software stack in different industries.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been interested in development economics and sort of global financial infrastructure. That's honestly a lot of the work that I was doing even when I was in politics. And that's when I started to hear about crypto.
See, that's the
So
kind of background, Rebecca, that
yeah.
more people need, really, truly, because you're in the middle of all of that. I'm thinking the whole time that, it's about tech builders,
Mhm.
policymakers, that intersection. You've been focused on that gap since the beginning. And I'm reading about your work, Asian economic policy for Biden's 2020 campaign, Clinton's 2016 foreign policy team. I mean, this is that broad mind that we're going to need to work with AI in a sense.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do think AI is incredibly interdisciplinary. That's a really
Mhm.
great point. It is. And that's not to say that, a single person or an entrepreneur needs to have all of that background in order to do well. But I do think that everyone who does work in this space has to fully embrace the interdisciplinary nature of it. And if that means that you're just very good at facilitating conversations between people from different backgrounds, then I think that's honestly the onus of leadership.
Mm.
For a lot of AI companies is making sure that, yes, your engineers and your product teams, they take pride of place because they're actually developing the product. But your BD teams, your growth teams, your sales teams, they are the ones who actually interact with the customers and users on a daily basis.
Mm.
And their input is incredibly valuable. In terms of policy, obviously, there are a lot of conversations around what is good AI policy
Yeah.
and how do we regulate this space. What I've always been an advocate for, easier said than done, is that the two sides really need to free up resources from people who generally are not expected to have these kinds of conversations.
Mm.
Policymakers, lawmakers, they need to be able to talk to the engineers and product people who are generally shielded from these kinds of conversations. Usually for a company, it's your lobbying team, it's your policy team, it's your legal team that talks to lawmakers. When you talk to those teams, the messaging is polished. It is no longer the blunt truth about what really drives technologists. You need to talk to the people who are actually building the tech. Vice versa as well. I think that a lot of technologists, when they talk to lawmakers and policymakers, they lose patience very quickly. They generally tend to lose patience with non-technical people, so I wouldn't feel too bad about that. They also need to, keep an open mind that when a policymaker seems to not have any interest in anything other than the dangers of AI or how do I regulate this industry or how do I stop this industry from growing, that does come from a certain place. And it's still useful to hear that perspective, even if you profoundly disagree with it. AI, it is incredibly interdisciplinary, but it forces you to also really engage with the heart of the matter and all of the things that you touch.
It is, and you make the point that they're going to be needing to speak to each other. That's going to happen because where we are right now sounds so trite, but it comes to mind. The genie is out of the bottle. This is it. This is real. We're going to be talking about a divide that isn't like pro or anti AI. That's not going to be the question. It is here. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be more about quality, quantity, taste. Someone brought up the idea of being magical versus manipulative. I mean, that's going to be the divide.
I think that was beautifully put. Magical versus manipulative. That is the divide to straddle. Honestly, pro or anti AI. The thing that I would not want to happen is that the anti AI crowd, they continue to be very vocal. They continue to be, borderline strident in some of their opinions. And
Mm.
what I'm seeing some people in AI or people who aren't in the industry, but they're really a big fan of AI tools, what they're starting to do is they're starting to virtue signal. They don't really share the same concerns as people who are not big fans of AI. They are big believers in the tools. They use it themselves. They think that there should be minimal guardrails on it, but they recognize that there is a group of people who feel very differently and they just sort of pay lip service to it. And that's when dialogue stops, because I do think that there are some very real concerns around AI. There is a lot of misinformation out there. I am on X all the time, and yet I was seeing a lot of fake videos that were really well made. And I
Yeah.
was like, I can't trust this. You know what? I'm going to go back to NewYorkTimes.com. Like, that's where I'm going to get my information from. So, Anthropic and OpenAI are on their way to being trillion-dollar companies. I don't think that growth is something that we need to be concerned about. These companies will find a way to grow. I think right now is the time to be thoughtful, to build good product. Honestly, that is, again, I think this person put it so beautifully. That is magical as opposed to manipulative. Um, Sort of the geopolitical aspect of it comes into play as well. Oftentimes I hear that a lot, is if we don't do it, China's going to do it. So we cannot put any brakes on this, because then we will lose. I think that fear is overblown. So right now is a good time to take stock of where we are. And ultimately what we're asking for is not, no offense, it's not a GDPR like regime. It's not regulation of technology before it hits scale. And so it never has a chance to get to that scale. We're at scale. So now I think it's on us to be thoughtful about it. And the objective is not to empower lawmakers or to like satisfy the Luddites of the world. That's not the objective. The objective is to put good product out there. And the moment that technology sort of can't check itself is actually a good time for some of this regulation to come in. It does ultimately make the industry better, and it does benefit the users of that technology to have the product quality improve. So right now is a pretty critical time. We did not sort of time the launches to coincide with this particular period, but I'm glad. I'm glad that we're putting ourselves in the dialogue when I think a lot of key decisions are going to be made.
Well, I said it before and I hinted at it, that your way of seeing, it's right and left hemisphere. They are in balance here. That's what we're going to need as we think about this more, and the AI conversation right now, because, it's excitement, it's fear, it's distrust, it's hype. As I put it before, and that was me, Rebecca, who came up with it. I just didn't want to put it out there as a concept, but now now you've
think you should
inspired
own it.
magical versus manipulative. That's where I think the camps are.
There are people who are going to build incredibly valuable companies off of fully embracing the manipulation. It's a free market. It's capitalism. It's going to happen. This tends to happen in the tech space as well. But I do think the winners are the ones who are actually going to get significant user traction and loyalty off of making something magical. So I think you should own it. I think it was so beautifully put. And I think it'll resonate with a lot of people. I certainly understood it as soon as you said it. And I think it's just a great way to express it.
It's about the magic. That's what it's about. And when it becomes that, then we have something that is much stronger and much more valuable than the conversation we're having right now.
Right.
I think what we're having right now is getting our head around it. And I wanted to end on that thought with like a rapid fire of where we are from your perspective. What is the one question you wish more people were asking about this space right now?
How does it help me connect with other people as opposed to make my life easier? I remember the first time I used the term consumer AI agents, I meant these character agents. So agents that are geared towards speaking to the consumer. Mm-hmm. But what I found out very quickly was that most people understood consumer AI agents to mean personal assistants. So you program an agent on OpenClaw to do your travel bookings, for instance, right, to come up with your weekly grocery shopping list, et cetera. So people to quote unquote make your life easier. I think that's great. There's absolutely a space for that. But that agent is ultimately for you. And I think that some of the best companions you could have, and this is true just for the people in your life as well, are people who are not just for you, they are for many. And so having consumer agents that are able to really touch the lives of many people who can be distributed, so they're not just private, that's something that we firmly believe in. But I also think that that question is going to drive a lot of the newer AI products out there, is how can we facilitate more connection as opposed to devolving into a world in which we surround ourselves with AI companions that are just for us. And then not only do we, lose out on the people in our lives, we lose out on that sort of very meaningful connection into just the broader fabric of our communities, our families, our societies, et cetera.
Another question for you. Are we culturally ready for characters that are persistent digital actors in our lives? Or is there something we still need to figure out?
I think we're ready. Yeah. I think we are absolutely ready. There have been different forms of this, just not in AI agent form, but different ways in which people have craved more connection with characters or more connection with the IP they love outside of what the studio has offered. So, after you watch a movie, you read reviews for that movie. You just watched it. Why do you need to read the review? No, it's because you
Oh,
want to continue to engage with something that really spoke
good.
to you. That's why people create UGC, because they see a story and they want to add to it. They're not thinking to themselves, oh, this is the property of Warner Brothers, let's say, and I can't touch it. It's, I really love this DC Comics character, for instance, or, this like Dune character, or Lord of the Rings or whatnot. And I want to continue that. So the explosion of UGC is really great evidence that people are not just wanting to engage with the IPs they love. They want to actually add to the body of work.
I will wrap it up to ask you where you think it's going to land. What changes first? Is it marketing? Is it audience expectations? Is it entertainment? What are you impacting? What changes first?
I think the marketing piece is going to be what's most profitable, probably, if I'm going to be honest.
You build it
But
every day. So, yes.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think what people will actually be talking about, what they will be experiencing, is just a completely new form of entertainment.
Hmm.
And before long, I think that it will be an expectation that if you put a piece of contained content out there, whether it's a 30-minute episode or a 2-hour movie or a game with 80 hours of gameplay, you will have an agent to go along with that. I think that will be an expectation. That'll be just part of the audience, fan, user package that people will come to expect. Honestly, I can't completely picture what that world is. I honestly think wherever we think it's going to land, everything that I just outlined here, in terms of how gaming entertainment is going to change, how we work with consumer brands, I don't think we're thinking big enough. Like once this is out there, the possibilities are just not things that we could have foreseen. You are incredibly thrilled to be working on it, but you're
Hmm.
prepared
Hmm.
to take responsibility, honestly, for the direction that this technology ultimately takes. But I think that much is true. Is once it's out there, whatever we thought was going to be the ultimate end game, or how big we thought this was going to be, it's not big enough.
I hope you get much bigger, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Seriously, we need you at the helm out there. This world has arrived. We need people like you out there at the helm, not some of the technology leaders I'm seeing right now, whom I will not name, but we all know what I'm talking about. Because we need balance, we need understanding, we need vision, and also the excitement. I think that's what struck me throughout the interview, that you are not thinking about the company. You are building the company, but you are thinking of something greater. It has been a great conversation, Rebecca. Sincerely,
Likewise, Vicky.
one of my
A lot of
favorites
fun.
this year.
Thank you, and likewise. This was so much fun, and we covered so many topics. I mean, you asked me a ton of questions that I honestly had not really thought about before. So thank you. This was really great. This was
I
really
would say it
great.
was magical. Can we say that?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. This was magical.
Excellent.
Oh, thank you. This was amazing.